Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We realized that we were probably one of the last sessions blocking you from all the happy hour events. So we will try to hit you with some good, hard information right now. You guys can get your notebooks ready for this. You're in for a treat. So, to kick things off, I have heard that it is still January. It is Wednesday. For anybody here, it's still Wednesday. We're still at CES. The mountain is going great. But given that we're still in the bold prediction window, I want to ask you, what is your bold prediction for 2024, or what are you hoping to see come to fruition this year?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say thank you, and I'm so happy to be up here with you, and hopefully we will have the expectations pretty high, but hopefully it'll be a good dialogue. So I think, my prediction for 2024 is similar to what I said on about the end of 2023. I think, being here with such great innovation, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention AI, right? Generative AI, I think, is going to play a big role moving forward, not just in 2024, but clearly changing the landscape of media and marketing moving forward. And then I think, the two other things that we are really thinking about on our side, one is influencers, creators, creator content, the creator economy, and how does that, work into our marketing plans, especially from a media perspective. How do we start using them as a media channel? And then the last thing, which I think everyone is well aware of, which is not really news, is, collapsing the funnel with, retail media networks, specifically for CPG business. How are we gonna really connect that consumer journey, and what does that look like? So those are probably the things that we're gonna continue to predict and manage through 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, those are great topics, and I think what I want to do now is maybe unpack some of those with you a little bit. So let's start with the retail media network piece, because I would say probably over the last 12 months, a lot of the narrative has been really around the power that retail media networks bring to the ecosystem, but also another area that is highlighted a lot is fragmentation, right? And so with CTV on the rise, with broadcasters, with lots of premium content there, coupled with retail media networks, we're starting to see that there's a lot of new platforms that are sort of hitting the market. There's a lot of new ways to reach consumers. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys are navigating the challenges around fragmentation and multiple platforms sort of coming forward in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think we probably struggle with it like everybody, other advertisers do, right? So for us, everything starts with the consumer, and we have a team of folks who understand consumer insights, what's their need state, what are they looking for, how are they consuming media, how are they consuming content, and then we marry that with our data, right? And I think the retail networks play a role in that because we unfortunately don't have a lot of first-party data. Most of our transactions are with the customer, the retail, so they can play a big role in helping us close that loop and really understand the consumer journey through the funnel. And you're right, the media landscape with CTV and streaming, it is very, very fragmented, and it's not easy to navigate it in any shape or form. And there's a lack of standardization. There's trying to figure out how to serve the right content, the right message to the right consumer at the right time. It's not easy. It's not a new concept, but it's something that we are striving to do. And I think technology and data is really going to unlock that as we think about, how we can do that moving forward.
Yeah. And good points all the way around. And one of the areas that I heard you say a few times now is data, right? You say data, by the way. Some people say data. Okay, you say, but we're on the same team. Okay. So as it pertains to data, talk to me a little bit about how you're bringing personalization at scale. It's those last two words that I'm highlighting that get a little bit tricky, right? We know about data, but how do you do it personalization at scale? Talk to me a little bit about how you guys navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we at PepsiCo have a proprietary data. We call it CDNA data, which is a combination of first-party, second-party, and third-party data. We actually port that over to all of our media partners, and then they help us find the consumer. And then we work with our brand teams to figure out the best piece of content. Now, that can be in the upfront of the production, where we want to make sure that we already have all the consumer segments laid out, and we need these types of content content shots or these types of versions of the creative, or we can do that in post-production using technology. OMDs are our agency of record. They have a solution. Most big media partners have their own solution where we can work with them to say, okay, we want to find somebody who's going to drink Pepsi, but also is living in Texas. And we might want to serve them an ad with a Pepsi and barbecue versus someone who's in New York might want Pepsi and a hamburger or Pepsi and a pizza. So we're getting real better at that, especially from geolocation. We want to make sure we can do that. So we're not great at the one-to-one. I think we're still, we still need to sell a lot of product. So we still want to group, consumers together as best we can to be efficient. But we are trying to get there for sure.
And I love that you finished that off with that statement about one-to-one versus one-to-many, or connecting with a broader audience. So one question I have for you is, talk to me a little bit about how Pepsi thinks through, in terms of their media strategy, some of the emerging channels that are coming into the marketplace, digital out of home for one. Or talk to me about some of the emerging trends and how do you ultimately find your consumers when their behavior is changing and their attention is starting to go to some of these newer, more emerging channels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have, I would say, a lot of resources, which is fantastic. We have a PepsiCo Labs program where we have startup companies come through, and then we try to figure out within all of our brands how we can pilot them and learn. So it's very much a pilot, prove it out, test and learn, and then if it works, we want to scale it up, right? We do need to, again, sell a lot of products. So we do have that pipeline of constant new companies, innovation coming in, and it's not just media, it's ad tech, it's content development, it could really, data, aggregating, automation, even just down to organizing our data, which I'm sure many of you struggle with. We certainly do. So how do we manage organizing and having good data to make those better decisions? So that's one avenue. And then within almost all of our campaigns, we do have probably not the newest, but maybe a tier 2 of innovation that we try to incorporate. And again, that test and learn and try to scale it up as much as possible. I think some of the challenges is the measurement end of it, right? So how do you close that loop? How do you know if it's effective? And then on the flip side, we want to make sure that we are incorporating those learnings as we think about moving forward. So that's kind of how we manage that.
And I fully agree with you. I think a lot of times people have asked me sort of, when we talk about data and measurement, sometimes people say, like, what's really important to you? Is it like the outcome measurement? Is it planning? And usually the way I answer that is to say, it's actually both, right? So like when you're using your data and measurement correctly, whatever your business outcomes that are taking place or getting recorded should ultimately be fueling the planning on the other side of that, right? And the goal, obviously, from a brand's perspective, is you want to become more effective and more efficient as you continue to do your test and learns, right? Given that's the case, I want to ask you a little bit about the power of one, okay? So maybe some of the audience doesn't know what the power of one is, but do you mind just giving us a little bit of an overview about it and how it ultimately plays out in your media strategy?
Sure, absolutely. So Power of One is what we call when we bring our snack side and our beverage side together. It sounds very intuitive, believe it or not. It's not when you have a giant company like PepsiCo, and some of us sit in Texas and some of us are in New York, but we know consumer behavior around occasions. People are going to snack and drink at the same time, right? So we have been doing a phenomenal job executing that at retail for many years. You'll see Pepsi and Lay's on display together, but we really haven't done a great job moving that into our marketing. And really over the last 2-3 years, we started doing more portfolio marketing where what we call the Power of One, where we have multiple brands that make sense, pairing them based on the occasion to drive that point of that purchase. So recent example that we've done is around football. As you all know, we are a sponsor of the NFL, and that is a great occasion. Football watching is an awesome occasion for people to snack on our chips and drink soda. So we have built a whole campaign around an occasion with awesome NFL superstars, saying, having a lot of fun about it, talking about the road to Super Bowl. And it putting, 6 brands in one creative concept, which is awesome. But it is also very efficient because we're actually sharing the cost with Frito-Lay, which makes the return on investment very attractive. Now, I would say what we are trying to balance with that is we still have to build brands, right? We're in the business of building brands, so it's hard to do that. On the flip side, when you have 6 brands in a 15-second ad when you're trying to get consumers' attention, so it is still very important for us to make sure that we are building equity in all of our brands, so that that moment of truth, they are going to choose our brands over our competitors. So it's a balancing act of both.
One thing that Pepsi has always done incredibly well is help win the hearts and minds of their consumers. Using one of the best mediums to do that is video. Talk to me a little bit about how video has evolved, how you guys have sort of applied it and put that to work, and sort of how does that play a role as you guys think through either the power of one or how you build your brands. Talk to me a little bit more about the use case of your video and the evolution of it.
Yeah, so our video, we have always been traditionally a very video-heavy advertiser. We believe in storytelling with the visual and the audio together. And as the media landscape has evolved and there's so much video and consumption of video is through the roof now with consumers, we really look at our video strategy holistically across the board, right? From live sports down to social platforms, to even digital at home that's available as well. And it's a holistic video approach based on consumer behavior. And that's fueled by a lot of data. And I think technology has been able to do that where we can consolidate some of our video partnerships into one technology platform, and then we can give the best consumer experience by managing frequency and making sure we're giving them the right message, or do we follow up with a different message, or building that pool of first-party data that we can then cross-promote and share other information with. But I would say, we're in the entertainment business too. We want to drive engagement, and we find that video is the best way to do that for our brands.
With just 4 minutes left, I have a final question for you. During the first question I asked you about your bold prediction, you talked a little bit about influencers. And so I want to circle back on that for just a second and ask you, how are you thinking about the role of influencers when you guys are thinking about your campaigns, and as you think about 2024, what opportunities exist for influencers in the way that you approach your marketing strategy?
Yeah, so influencers, I think, are still a very complex way to navigate it. They can come in from our PR perspective. They can come in as brand ambassadors or endorsement deals, and then you can buy them through media channels, right? And you can scale that up. So where we are right now is we are developing an influencer strategy as part of our marketing campaigns, and some of that lives within media where we will be working with our partners to figure out who are the right influencers that match that brand identity, right? The core thing is making sure that the values are the same for what the brand stands for and the influencers. And a great example of this is what we're looking for is we have a platform called Better with Pepsi, which is food and Pepsi together. And there's so many influencers in the food space now. So how do we figure out how we leverage the power of those communities and make sure that our brands can be part of those conversations? So we're looking at doing that, but from my perspective, from media, it's also important that we put paid media behind that, because we still want people to see it, right? So I was on an earlier panel where we talked about organic, and I feel like we're back to where organic means boosted media again, so it's come full circle. And it is true, so what content is doing well, what is getting higher view rates, what is having completion rates, and then we'll take that piece of content and then we'll amplify it even more because we already know that it's working. So that's how we're going to continue to use influencers moving forward.
I love it. Great. Thank you for touching on all the different aspects. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. We may have time for one question if someone is burdened to ask her a question. Okay, here we go.
I can just be really loud,
All right, awesome.
if that helps.
That would be great.
You talked about the power of one, and I'm wondering, is it more helpful to put 2 powerful brands together, or for a strong brand, maybe like Pepsi, to be paired with something less strong and lift it up? So is it better to do 2 strong brands together, or maybe use one to boost another?
Oh, good question. So since we're still learning that, I think we initially started out, we had probably too many brands in our first go at this. We had 6 brands. So a brand like Bubbly, which has not as high awareness, or Mountain Dew, that's not as high awareness as Pepsi, didn't fare as well versus Pepsi or Lay's, right? So I think what we're going to start to do is pair, like Doritos and and Mountain Dew go very well together, Pepsi and Lay's go back together. So as we think about our campaigns, we might have one overarching occasion, and then we'll start to branch off and have more pairings of products that consumers are actually, we know, are buying together to drive that occasion. But sometimes the bigger brands do overshadow the smaller brands when you're doing a portfolio play, unfortunately. Sure. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.